All right, today we're going to learn about pollination. Now, what exactly is pollination? Well, pollination is the transferring of pollen from flowers. It's important because it is needed for flowers to reproduce. This is actually the first step in the reproduction process of flowers. Now here we see a magnified image of two granules of pollen. Now, how does pollination work? Well, there are three main parts of a flower that are necessary for the process. Pollen is made in the stamen of the flower, which are each of these four long, skinny tubes you see here in the picture. The small circular portions on top of the stamen is called the anther. And this is where the pollen is found after it's made. These are typically sticky, and this is where most of the pollen is going to be found. The long yellow piece in the middle of the flower here is called the pistil. The pistil is where the pollen must get to in order for a flower to reproduce, and the pollen enters here at the top of the pistil and makes its way down. Now notice the arrow in the diagram. The arrow begins at the anther of flower A and ends at the pistil of flower B. This is showing the course that pollen must take in order to reproduce another flower. But not all flowers need to transfer their pollen to a different flower in order to reproduce. We also have something called self-pollination. Now when flowers transfer their own pollen from their own anther, so here's the anther once again, to their own pistil, so the pollen would get from here simply to here, that's something called self-pollination. Cross-pollination is what we have been talking about, and that is what we see in the diagram. Flower A's pollen follows the course of the arrow to flower B's pistil. But how does pollen get from one flower to another? Well, there's a number of ways, but most likely it's through pollinators. Now, insects and birds are usually the ones who are responsible for this. And what's interesting is that they don't even know that they're helping the flowers out, actually. When insects or birds feed on the flowers, pollen actually attaches to them, like we see here with the bee. And it's carried to the next flower that the insect or the bird feeds on. Now it causes pollination because the pollen from flower A attaches to the insect or the bird, and when the insect or bird feeds on flower B, the pistil receives this pollen just by rubbing against the insect. Now pollination is very important because after pollination occurs, the flower can actually begin to reproduce. I have a short YouTube video here that's going to show us this process once again.
Like all living things, plants reproduce to ensure future generations. But since plants can't move from place to place, they need a way to transfer pollen from one plant to another. Wind is a major pollinator, but it acts unselectively. Insects, on the other hand, pollinate flowers with precision. The bright colors and strong fragrances of flowers attract insects. Once lured to the flowers, insects discover pollen and nectar. Bees, butterflies, and other insects gather pollen and nectar to feed themselves and their young. As insects move from plant to plant, they transfer pollen from one flower to the next. Fertilization occurs and seeds are formed. Over time, flowers have developed colors, smells, and shapes that successfully entice insects. At the same time, insects have developed features and behaviors that make them more effective pollinators.